Fire and Ice, Alchemically Rising, Phoenix Rising, a Pegasus Reborn. You don't remember what the Pegasus is? I want to go and bring this up. That the Pegasus is the horse, the white horse with the wings, and I always like the look of it. But anyway, getting to my message. Ruling the system and the spirits ruling the system. The blue bloodline system that is ruling our system, right? It's just like my notepad I have down here. It's like, what's ruling the system, right? It's like, if you study into the whole term of blue blood and the terminology of blue blood, it all has its own spiritual implications. The term blue blood, they'll tell you different things about it, right? Oh, it derived from and they'll call it the conspiracy theorists. The conspiracy theorists are the only ones saying that it descended from the aristocratic bloodline. Just different things. You see it in Hollywood, you see it through our entertainment, you see it through music, and you have to ask the question, if anyone's ever asked, like, well, why? Why is it in there? You even see it in horror movies, believe it or not. Growing up, you see it in the Hellraiser movies, you see it where they would send people to hell in the movies, and then these demon things would come up with these shapeshifting things, and they would fill them with this blue blood stuff. That whole blue blood stuff is literally, and you see it in Resident Evil and all the other things, music, but it's literally, if you pray about this, you'll receive it. I promise you. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. This is literally, look up blue blood, but specifically negative RH factor that stays, it lives on the surface of red blood cells, right? The negative RH blood type. Because there's so many different blood types you can see. There's ABO, there's BO, but this specifically, this negative RH blood type, right, lives on the surface of red blood cells. And basically, you have a split between the two, right? You have the positive, which is the recessive, and then you have the negative, which is the dominant. So, right. And so, I can tell you that the dominant negative RH antigen, right? I mean, I can't say like, oh, the recessive's not been rolling too, but specifically, I'm talking about the dominant negative RH antigen, right? You can't transfuse them both together, because if a positive comes along when the mother gives birth to the negative, it kicks out the positive, but it has to send out these antibodies to create other blood. It basically creates a blood mutation to create other blood types. Ask the question, why is it like that? Is it, and they'll say, oh, conspiracy theorists say, or other people will say, like, they'll say it's for like these two blood types kicking out this positive blood type, because or the negative is the hybrid. It's non-human, basically. And you read about this in other articles. I can tell you a guy I listened to by the name of Robert Cipher for the Atlantean Gardens YouTube channel, that he talks about the same thing. And other people I know I've listened to as well, Jonathan Kleck and other people. I do honestly believe this negative RH, and I'm gonna go ahead and say it's not human. You've seen other shows like the History Channel and other things called like ET Bloodlines and all that. Where they tweaked, transfixed, whatever. I must 100% believe that this comes from the Canaan bloodline and Canaan's descent, and it's spiritual as much as it's physical. Tweaked, sequenced our bloodline through black magic, but specifically it derives from the spirit. If you read in, I'm not a religious person, but this is what I received through a download, and I do 100% believe this. The spirit, if you read when the story of the two sacrifices between Abel and Cain, that spirit of zealousy, because it was a spirit of zealousy, entered into Cain. that spirit came from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because this fallen angel by the name of Satano, if you read in the book of Baruch chapter 3, planted that tree. And it had a symbology between the three branches of Noah and his two sons getting in the ark, but also the evil about it was the frequency that was encoded into that tree by this fallen angel, which is Saturn frequency. And really, it also came from the spirit that created these other hybrid bloodlines even before the time of Adam and Eve. Look at throughout all our movies, right? Lord of the Rings, where the trees and the rocks were alive, the movie of Noah. I could think of some other movies. Sometimes they come back, or just some other movies. You see in the movies The Fifth Element with this black goo. The Godzilla movies where it showed some kind of scene or something having to do with, I think it was black goo. It was like black goo or some kind of black goo type stuff. And these quartz crystals. And it had connections. They were making connections that had to do with cloning and hybridization. And you see in these old, their manga comics and these cartoons, and they always have something to do with Azazel and its connection with black goo and cloning. And it's just like, eventually you're going to have to start picking up the pieces, and it's just like, make the connection that these repeating patterns are not by accident. This black goo stuff literally was taught by these fallen angels, and specifically this fallen angel, Azazel, or Azazel, however you say it. And every cartoon you see or movie, such as Supernatural, you see this angel depicted, and he's evil, he's malevolent. But the Bible, I think even in, Genesis, or I think it's in Enoch, doesn't talk about him that much. It talks about it a little bit. And even in the sacrifice, I can't remember the name of it, where it's talking about taking the two goats for the sacrifices, and this specific sacrifice was had the name Azazel in it, and it was called the scapegoat sacrifice. If anyone remember the scripture of that, but it basically, the connection I'm really saying with this black goose stuff, the same spirit of zealousy derived. I literally believe, because what I had received from it is rooted in this black goo stuff. Saturn frequency, the same frequency the giants were carrying, the Nephilim, fallen angels, so on and so forth, was the same spirit that was rooted in the black goo, was sent into Cain with that same Saturn frequency. And when it did, because God didn't curse him himself, he used that spirit to curse his bloodline. And basically, when they're talking about in these shows, did it tweak the bloodline? In the History channels, that what I have received, and just like these Resident Evil movies where you see the different symbolism, but it's not viruses that they call it, the T virus and all that. Because if you notice in all the color symbolisms, they basically change into these different mutant things, and those are represented by hybrid bloodlines, the 13 of them. They're different colors. So not only were they stolen from the rainbow, they were also stolen. Stolen from the rainbow for the LGBTQ. It was used to create hybrid bloodlines and to birth the human race's original bloodline, and basically used. I gotta switch hands for a second. Used. To basically, it was like I was seeing it, and it was like. The term spiritual runoff came to my spirit, as in to hybridize. Imagine one bloodline, and then it separates and creates all these other colors for all these other bloodlines. And that's literally the whole root of why you would have negative Rh antigen, and you would have a positive come along, and it would create these antibodies sent out to create these other blood types. Why even is that? Why send out antibodies? Why create other blood types? Because the root of it all goes back to that. Goes back to the spiritual runoff to create these other hybrid bloodlines. And the root to start with that specific negative Rh. And you have a positive come along to create other blood types, because it goes back to that spirit. Tweak, sequence, whatever History Channel, whatever shows want to come up and call this stuff, put it out for what it is. It's spiritual as much as it is physical. That it has to do with this negative Rh dominant antigen blood type. That really, since it has created all these other hybrid blood types, hybrid bloodline specifically, the power of 13, which really it's just the 13 world bloodline descendants, hybrid descent bloodlines. That is not even, they posed the question, was it ET, was it not fully human? Well, it's not fully human, no, because it comes from, it's rooted in darkness. This negative Rh antigen, dominant antigen specifically, is rooted in darkness and that same zealous spirit. And literally, it has corrupted the entire human race for centuries. That's why it comes along, and then you hear about people like Timothy Albertina come along, and each new generation is more and more hybridized. Until eventually we would all take the Noah right in the palm or the forehead, right? You know what I'm talking about? That it's almost like you picture humanity's just been falling into this big black hole forever, and we need our light source to get back to the right path. Eventually, SHIT is going to hit the fan in our world, right? And truth is slowly starting to come out in our world. What has happened, what had happened in the garden, what truly happened, and what happened after, before, everything. And by nature, I am a seer, so I get downloads. I see things that I'm shown from the greater divine, the greater that's more perfect and better than I am, that I have to share this truth to others because I need people and I want people to know this truth, that it was that zealous spirit that entered in, and this is, and what is rolling our world today still, it is those bloodlines. It is Cain's bloodline and his descendants from this negative Rh dominant antigen bloodline of negative Rh blue bloods. Blue bloods originally is rooted in that spirit of zealousy that entered into Cain, from rooted by that black goo stuff that created all the hybrids that you see in these movies that originally were here, and now we call them cryptids for the disembodied. And now people say, oh, that was demons, that was the Nephilim. No, I'm talking about, I would specifically use this term hyper progenitors, because they're not the spirits of Nephilim. These are the spirits of these hyper progenitor hybrids that were created. I don't even think I would call them offspring. They were really just hybrids created through the black goo, and I believe, oh, honestly, there's more clones of them. There was more clones that they created of them. And think about another movie I remember, Jeepers Creepers. Did everyone ever think to guess that was like, you think of, I think it was an H.P. Lovecraft's book, or one of those books, I was seeing those same creatures being created, and it reminded me of the Book of Enoch. They were creating those same Jeepers Creepers monsters. And I've seen other movies like it, and it just like makes me think exactly of the Book of Enoch. Even if they didn't specifically come out and say it, because obviously it's not going to read and show everything, but they created things that were living and non-living. They would create grass that was non-living, things out of glass, rocks, trees, things that were not even living. They spliced the genome to create it as a living being. Like literally everything that was non-living and living. So it's like, and yes, I know, unless you actually pray about this, and really you have to believe in it, like, but pray to really receive it and know what I'm talking about. This black goo symbolism has always been praised in the occult realm, because the root of it goes back to the creation of all these hybrids, going back to that same spirit that entered into the Canaan bloodline, blue blood, negative Rh dominant antigen blood. Point blank. But the spirits, you want to know, it's Canaan's negative Rh dominant antigen rolling this system that has been rolling in since the beginning of time, and all his offspring that came along with it as his half human, half hybrid beings, and those would just be called progenitors. So you have the whole hybrid created through the black goo, which is the hyperprogenitors, and then you have the half human, half hybrid, known as just call it just the progenitors. Hybrid, hyperprogenitors, half human, half hybrid, whole hybrid, hyperprogenitors, half human, half hybrid. Those are just the progenitors. So hyperprogenitors, cryptids, and then human beings, just the progenitors. Fire and Ice, Alchemy Rising, Pegasus Reborn.